Johnversations Podcast. This is episode number 34. And as always, I am your host, John Connor. Just wanted to say thank you for checking in with us on a Wednesday and hanging out for the episode. This week's a little bit different. We actually don't have a guest. I'll be honest, kid got sick with a really bad cold, and then mom got sick, and then I got sick, and there was COVID tests and a house full of pathetic people. So just a lot of people not feeling good and run down. And so just being honest with you, I'd kind of put booking off for this week just so we could focus on getting better. But, you know, we hadn't really taken a break since I had that health scare back in like February, March. We've been going strong from episode 9, and this is episode 34. So didn't want to take the week off. Feeling a little bit better now. Still got the sniffles, a little bit of a cough, but just happy to be here and hanging out with you guys. So I figured what we would do this week, kind of just go through some stuff that's happening in the world. Wanted to kind of cover some things that I've really been enjoying that, you know, I'm hoping that maybe you guys would. And also wanted to just talk about, you know, people that have been listening to the show and you know, maybe we can make this whole thing a little bit more interactive. And I definitely apologize. I've got this crazy pimple on my forehead. I'm going through like some 15-year-old regression, and I don't know, it's crazy. You can be 35 and still get these like gnarly zits every once in a while. So please try. My eyes are right here. You can look up here for those listening. This is more of a visual gag, but you can check it out on YouTube if you want to get the joke. Boom. So before we kind of jump into what I wanted to talk about, I did just want to take a minute and remind you guys, running a podcast, you know, there's definitely a cost associated with it, but I love doing it. I love being able to have cool guests on, people with unique perspectives and interesting stories and things like that. And then I like having them on and being able to share these people and these conversations with the people who want to listen at home and stuff like that. So, you know, anything you guys can do to support. And I know that right now, you know, with COVID and with people out of work and the world just being insane, it is just a crazy, crazy time. So, you know, if you do want to support the show, you can head over to johnversationspodcast.com. If you head over there, you can click the merch button. If you click on that merch button, it'll bring you up to our t-shirt shop. We've got t-shirts, face masks, just a lot of cool stuff. I'm also working on getting some stickers made on the cheap. I think they're like $2 a piece. So once I get those done, I'll get those linked up there as well. So just, you know, every little bit helps. You know what I mean? We pay for hosting. We pay for Adobe subscriptions to be able to edit the show and stuff like that. So, you know, if you're enjoying the show and if you're in the position where you can afford to help, and you know, you're a fan of the show and you like what you're hearing, we would greatly appreciate it. If you are in a position where you can't afford to help, but you still want to support the show, just telling your friends about it. Hey, you know, there's this podcast I listen to every week. The host is kind of whack, but the guests are cool, right? So, you know, just let your friends know, right? Hit up Apple Podcast, subscribe to the show, share it on like your Facebooks. If you listen on Spotify, you can go into Spotify and share the show right from Amazon, or I'm sorry, right to Instagram. You can share it right to Facebook, all those social media platforms. So, you know, we're very do it yourself here. We're not a big ship. It's just me and Mat Halliday out of Michigan, and you know, we're just, you know, this is something that we really have a passion for. So again, if you dig it, if you like checking out the episodes every week, if you can support us financially, as far as, you know, getting some merch or something like that, we would greatly appreciate it. But if not, just let people know about us. That's, you know, we want to make sure that we're getting as many ears in as possible, working to create better content for you guys and bringing in more guests and things like that. So just wanted to, again, say thank you for everyone who's supported so far, if you're listening. And let's kind of jump into the topics that I want to talk about. So first, I'm sure all of you guys know, but President Trump diagnosed with the COVID-19. I've noticed he's not calling it the China virus now. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but since he's got COVID, it's coronavirus or the COVID. but he's kind of refrained from the China virus. And I don't know about you guys, and maybe you feel the same way. Maybe I'm off base, but I like, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I was really hoping for a minute. It seemed like this might be the thing that would potentially humble him and maybe like help him to take this a little bit more seriously. I mean, we've had 210,000 Americans die from COVID, right? So, and there's a lot of people, I know there's a lot of people anti-maskers and, it's no worse than the flu and blah, 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 blah. But then, when the president gets it, and then not only does the president get it, but the, Hope Hicks gets it, who's with him. And then his press secretary gets it. And now Stephen Miller has it and Chris Christie. So you're seeing it spread, and it looks like it all came from, they had the little White House gathering where, surprise, surprise, nobody was wearing masks or anything like that. And Trump was up there talking, and they were announcing his Supreme Court pick, the Amy Coney, Amy Coney Barrett. That's her name. So it's funny because I saw this article with an image, and you could see where all these people were seated, and Trump was up in front of them speaking, and it's literally like dominoes, like they're just kind of like falling. So it's it was one of those things where I was really hoping that it like maybe it would humble him, or maybe he would have a different view, and he got flown to Walter Reed on his private helicopter, which, we all have, right? That's something that if heaven forbid one of us gets COVID, we just hop on our private helicopter and head to Walter Reed and, get our presidential suite. And then he was given a bunch of experimental medications. I guess that there's a thing, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but it's something called a compassionate use request. So if a drug is not been tested by the FDA and it's considered experimental, you can request a compassionate use request, essentially, and they can grant usage of that experimental drug. So I know that he was on some crazy steroids. He's on some stuff that hasn't been tested by the FDA, and he's doing I was wrong. He's definitely not humbled at all. He's using this, it seems, very much to be like, well, look, COVID's not that bad. I got it and I'm beating it. But what it seems like is, I don't know if anybody saw, but he went to the White House and climbed up the steps, and he took his mask off and gave some thumbs up and the big salute. But before he did that, there was a tight shot of him, and you could see where on his face it looked like he was gasping for breath, or it was painful for him to breathe. And, from what I've been reading, Dr. Fauci and some other doctors have basically said, like, look, he's not out of the woods yet. And not that, I don't want anybody to die from COVID. I don't want, I'm not like rooting for something terrible to happen to him or anything like that. Like, just like I wouldn't root for COVID to take out, somebody I disagree with in my personal life or anything like that. But, there's somebody had posted, like, maybe this was like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her making a negotiation or like her final ruling at the gates of heaven or something of that nature. Like, it just seems like the universe. I was telling my wife that it feels like with COVID, if you're going out and you're doing recreational things, right? So for, like I got my haircut for the first time since beginning of March. I was that's why you guys may have noticed on the show, if you watch on YouTube, I've been wearing a hat and stuff like that, because I was just buzzing my head. And I've got a weird shaped head. Very strange. I got a birthmark on the back of my head and stuff like that. So I usually, if because of that, I was wearing a baseball hat. Usually I like going, shout out to Levi Bratton here in Middle Tennessee. He does a great job. He's quick with the fade, makes it look good. And that's who I usually went to. And, because of COVID and everything, I was just like, nah, like I'm not going anywhere. I don't need to look good, anything like that. So I was just buzzing my hair on my own. And I was finally like, you know what? I need to go out and get a haircut. Like it's been long enough. Like I'm wearing a mask. I feel safe. Gonna do it. But I was telling my wife that it feels like when you opt to do recreational things, right? When you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go to a restaurant like a handful of times, or I'm gonna go to the bar and get something to drink. It really feels like, at least to me, and you know, uh, maybe I'm being overly cautious, but it kind of feels like a game of Russian roulette, where you've only got so many get out of jail free cards when you're putting yourself in those situations, being around a bunch of people right now, where eventually that luck's going to run out, and the way that cases are skyrocketing, especially here in Tennessee. I mean, we had like 2,800 yesterday. So, it just seems like eventually you're going to get it. And it just seemed like kind of cosmic fate for the universe to look at Trump and say, okay, you've been downplaying this. Don't need to wear a mask. You've been refusing to wear a mask. You've been holding these rallies with tons of people. And now, like, guess what? Like, your number's been called. You have it. So, I'm hoping, again, I don't wish any ill will or anything like that on him, but I'm really hoping that, for people who support him, or people who may be like, oh, this virus isn't a big deal, anything like that. Maybe it's a little bit of a wake up call to them. And maybe I'm just damn delusional that, I mean, it, like, if nothing else has changed any minds up until this point, that this will do it. But like, I don't know. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, his tweets are already being his social media post. Facebook took down a post of his saying that the flu was worse than COVID. Twitter did the same thing. They hit his tweet, stuff like that. Like, he's already using this, it seems like, to be like, hey, I'm 73 years old, and look, I got it and I'm fine. But yeah, I just think it's important to remember that, not everybody, again, can get on their private helicopter to Walter Reed and then get compassionate use request approval and take all these drugs. I mean, if we get it, we're going to regular hospitals, things like that. We're getting the medicine that's out there, and it looks like it's gonna be a little bit before a vaccine. So I don't know. It's just been crazy. It's been a crazy week, and I mean, we've had several COVID tests in our house because whenever somebody gets sick, it's like we want to make sure that this isn't the case. So I wish him the best. I hope, I do hope that he recovers, but again, I'm hoping that this is something that might open people's eyes. And the other thing that drives me crazy is the conspiracy theories around it. We had Dr. TJ Webb on a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about conspiracies around COVID, and it's like people are so quick. There's a conspiracy now that somebody wiped down the president's mic before the debate, and could COVID have been on that rag? Could somebody have, but then you think about everyone who's gotten it, who was around him before. It's just an excuse, instead of saying like, yeah, he wasn't responsible. It's got to be some kind of crazy conspiracy theory, like they're out to get him, where it's just way more likely that like he was acting like an idiot. So like I said, no ill will. No, I wish nothing but the best as far as like recovery for him and things like that. But I don't know, man. I'm just hoping that it's going to lead to a change, and maybe we start seeing things get a little bit better. So, do want to talk about, again, kind of talking about people checking out the show. One thing that I've noticed is most podcasts. So if you don't have a podcast and you listen to podcasts, this may be some inside baseball, but I wanted to kind of let you guys know about it. So most podcast platforms have something called analytics. And what those analytics let you look at is, who's listening, like where they're listening, like what cities, what countries. And what's been really cool about watching our show grow is, I'm a Michigan transplant here in Tennessee, right? So got a lot of family, a lot of friends in Michigan. We were seeing a lot of plays there. We're seeing a lot of plays in Tennessee, stuff like that. And what I've noticed now is, we've got people listening in Texas every week, people listening in California every week, people listening in Washington, people in in Germany, people in India. We have friends in the UK. Shout out to Miss Maisie in the UK, an old friend of the show. She's been, she's been listening, sharing it, and so it's been really, really cool to kind of see how the show is growing. And I just, if you're listening to the show right now, if you've got it on your car, your headphones, or you're at the gym, or just trying to kill time during work, I just want to say thank you. Trust me, it's everybody and their brother has a podcast nowadays. So the fact that every week you guys are tuning in and checking out the show and have been reaching out and been supportive of the guests that we've had on and things like that, it just means the whole world. And one thing I did want to do, no matter where you're listening from, do me a favor, right? I want to make this an interactive show, right? I don't just want this to be just me talking and people listening. But I want to make it 150% interactive. So if you guys would like to, if you're listening in Texas, or if you're listening in India, or if you're listening in the UK or Romania, we've got some people that listen in Romania. It's crazy. If you're listening in one of these places and you're listening to this episode, send us an email at contact@johnversationspodcast.com, and I'll drop that email in the show notes. So whether you're watching this on YouTube or if you are listening on like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the email will be right there. Drop us a link or drop us an email with that link. Let us know what you're thinking of the show. Let us know like what you'd like to see, like where you're listening from. The other thing that I was thinking about doing, and again, I was discussing this with, and I guess I just want you guys to kind of know what's going on with the show, because it feels personal when we put the show out every week. So to give you an idea, like I do the interview, I level all the audio out, the video out. I send it to Mat Halliday, who is our post-production audio engineer and just a great human being, extremely talented. Shout out to Matt. He does amazing work with bands. The dude knows audio, and I've known him for years, and he's been on the show as a guest. He's a high quality human being. So I send him that, then he sends it back. It makes it sound all pretty and stuff like that, and then we put everything out, and we put it out because we want people to enjoy these conversations. We want to and I started the show because I wanted to introduce you to people with, again, interesting stories, or maybe you hear something and say, hey, like I can do that, or maybe I've needed this drive, or this bothers me too. How does this person get through it? So we've been thinking, and I'll be honest, again, right now it's a little weird, but we've been thinking about starting a Patreon and calling it the JV Squad, right? The Johnversations Squad. And this may be something that's coming down the line, but we maybe do $1 or $2 a month, like something really, really minimal. But what I want to do is kind of give the people who listen the opportunity to participate in the show. So, my goal is to set it up where if you join, right, I send you a list of everyone who's coming up on the show over the next few weeks, and then you can reach out with any questions that you would like answered personally. We could even do like some like merch discounts or like special episodes just for Patreon subscribers, stuff like that. So again, right now, because of COVID and stuff like that, like I don't know if we're going to launch any kind of like subscription thing right away, but just, just to kind of plan something out. If you guys would be interested, drop it in the comments, or, send us an email again, contact@johnversationspodcast.com. Let us know if that's something you'd be down with. We want the show to be reflective of the people who listen to it, because you guys are such a big part of the show and really the reason that we do it. So, if that's something you would be interested in, just leave us some feedback. Let us know. And before we close out today, I'm going to let you know some one of the guests that we have coming on towards the end of the month, because again, if you guys would like to ask any kind of specific questions, anything like that, for that guest, I would love to be able to do a segment where, we ask your questions and things of that nature. So be on the lookout for that. We'll make sure that we keep you updated. There was a couple things I wanted to talk to you guys about. And again, this one's going to be a shorty. I just, again, wanted to kind of touch base with everybody and put something out there for you and kind of aim it towards the people who've been listening. But there's some cool things that are out there streaming. I know, a lot of people are still home, stuff like that. And there's some cool stuff that I've kind of been getting into and maybe you guys would think it's cool too. So the first thing that I wanted to tell you guys about is a podcast. Now they come out Mondays and Fridays, I believe, or Mondays and Thursdays. I'd have to double check, but we're kind of on alternate days. And it is Mr. Drew Stoutenberg and Mr. Jordan McMillan. Drew has a podcast now called Stouting Off. And he just kind of gives his take on things that are going on in the world now. If you don't know Drew is a Michigan transplant down here in Tennessee as well. I've talked about it before, but I grew up playing in bands, kind of, being on the road and stuff like that. And Drew is the exact same. We're a couple years apart. So I knew of him like kind of coming up and we'd met a few times and stuff like that. And when I found out that he moved to Nashville and he was starting this podcast, I reached out to him and, it was just like, hey man, like, I'm so glad that you're doing this because, there's just some people out there. So there are people out there that have just kind of a crazy, like, uniqueness to them. And Drew is one of those people. And you guys may also know Drew. Ryan Scott Graham was on the show and he's, the bassist of State Champs. He's the kind of the brain behind Speak Low If You Speak Love. Drew is actually the drummer for Speak Low If You Speak Love. So whenever they go on the road and tour or record, Drew's kind of the partner in crime there. So not only does he have an amazing podcast, but he's also an amazing drummer. He was in another band. You can find him on Bandcamp. They were called Ontario. Shout out to Tim Paul and Richie Rich. It's kind of a deep cut there, but they have an EP called the Kickstarter EP, and it's really good. It's still on rotation for me personally. So yeah, that's Stouting Off. Really good. He's again, Drew and Jordan, they have a really good repertoire. They get along really well. It's a lot of really good banter. So if you're someone that just likes to laugh, you know what I mean, and kind of enjoy interesting takes on things, Stouting Off. Check it out. They're on Instagram. You can get the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places. He also videotapes it. Videotapes like it's 1980. He's got a VHS camera over his shoulder and he goes out there and switches out the reel to reel. No, they record video and it goes up on YouTube as well. So check it out. It's really, really good. They're great guys, and I don't know, man, it's just funny. So I've checked out a bunch of their episodes. I think they've got like episode either 12 or 13 is coming by the time this comes out. So check them out, follow them, subscribe. It's definitely worth it. I got another thing I want to talk to you guys about. I don't know. Excuse me. I'm gonna take a sip. I don't know if you can hear that. It's late. It's like 10:33 here in Nashville. We're doing kind of a late night session, so apologize. I've been with a kid and chasing her around, and so my voice is a little. But I want to talk to you guys about The Vow. So this is a new docu-series that is on HBO. If you have HBO Max, you can get it there. If you have Comcast or you're an HBO subscriber, you can get it there. The Vow is absolutely insane. So I don't want to spoil anything. I definitely want you to watch it, but it is about the group that was called Nexium, which is NXIVM. If you were to Google it, and their leader Keith Raniere. And it is insane. So, I mean, just to kind of like to sum it up, like the first episode starts and I'll be honest, I was kind of thinking, I was telling my wife, I started without her. I didn't know if it was something that she'd be interested in, but I started without her. I was like, when I was watching it, I was like, man, some of these ideas I could get behind. Like, this seems like something that, like, if I didn't know that this was some kind of crazy cult, crazy cult or anything like that, like, I could see myself being somebody that would be like, oh, like this works. Cause the whole thing is like about not allowing yourself to be a victim and how to, how if you can control your feelings and move past things, like, a letdown isn't really a letdown because you can look at it in a different way or not, or, control that feeling. So I don't know. It was definitely something that, when I first started, I was like, well, like the general premise seems like something I could get behind, but then it's like a light switch flips. And I mean, we're talking like sex trafficking. Allison Mack, who was on Smallville back in the day, is like plays a big part in it and stuff like that. And again, I don't want to spoil it, but it's 9 episodes long, comes out on Sundays. And then this Sunday coming up would be episode 8. I'm just trying to think about when this is going to release. Yeah. So that'd be episode 8. So go back on demand and watch it. If you haven't, it's going to absolutely blow your mind. Especially, so I don't want to, like, again, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but they talk like for a certain group, you had to put up what was called collateral. So like these women may have to put up like nude photos, or, one lady wrote a letter and said, made up allegations that like her husband beat her and her kids. So like, if you ever tried to leave this group, they would be like, well, if you leave, we're going to release this stuff. They call it collateral, but it's essentially blackmail. So it's just, I don't know, man. It's real. If you like true crime, which is, I don't even know if it's necessarily, I mean, it's definitely some crimes going on. But it's more like, I mean, it goes up to like 2018. So like this was like a cult that was operating like up to like 2 years ago. So I don't know if you're into that kind of thing. If you find it interesting, I've been absolutely glued to it. I started it, got to episode 7. My wife heard about it on Armchair Expert and was like, oh, like that sounds good. And I was like, I told you about that like 7 weeks ago. So I've started over with her. We're on moving into episode 3 for like my second watch. Is not even over yet. Definitely check it out. The other one that I would suggest, now I'm going to suggest this with a severe warning, because I was familiar with the story when it happened and was familiar with some of the details. But when I watched this documentary, I was extremely triggered. So the documentary is on Netflix. It's called American Murder: The Family Next Door. And it is about the murder of Shanann Watts and her 2 daughters. I believe there were 3 and 4, if I remember correctly, by Shanann's husband, Chris Watts. And it's crazy because the whole documentary is told through like her social media feed, and then like text messages they recovered. And then it's also told like by police body cam video and interrogation video. So it seems, as far as like the social media stuff, it seems, I don't know, extremely personal is the only way that I can put it. And I was living here in Nashville, in the Nashville area when it happened. And I remember it being on the news, and I knew all the details of the case and everything like that. But I'll be honest, what I think it was is that it happened before I was a dad. And I'm like, I was watching this documentary and watching it from a fresh set of eyes of being a parent. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, like I'm not Mr. Tough Guy. I had tears streaming down my face at certain parts because my heart was breaking, because you think about, like you think about yourself as a parent, and then you're like, how could anybody do what this guy did? And why he did it. He lost a bunch of weight and had a mistress. You know what I mean? So sorry, spoilers, but again, it was in the news like a year and a half ago. It made nationwide history, or nationwide news. And I remember it was all over the place, and it happened in Colorado. So I won't go into too many of the details, because, again, if you're a true crime person, it's definitely worth checking out. I just want to make sure that, again, I'm kind of giving you that trigger warning, because I don't know. I got into bed and I every once in a while our kid still sleeps with us in the bed. It's just that age. And I got into bed and I hugged her extra tight, So if you're a parent, or if you are easily triggered, or you're highly sensitive to things like that, I would definitely recommend maybe skipping it. But if you can stomach it, and it's not gory, it's not like violent, anything like that, it's just sad, dude. It's I don't know, it's just sad. It was heartbreaking. So if true crime is your thing, it's definitely something to check out. But again, just wanted to kind of give that caveat, because I didn't want anybody being like, yeah, I was listening to the Johnversations podcast and they said, check this out. And now I'm in tears and I haven't slept for 3 nights. So just fair warning. So another thing I want to talk to you guys about, Halloween is coming up, right? And with Halloween coming up, it is time for scary movies. It's time, and this Halloween is going to be a little bit different with COVID, right? I'm thinking about, because I know there's going to be kids trick-or-treating, and I'm thinking about rigging up a pulley system with a bucket of candy that I can just operate from inside my house. So if they're in the doorbell, I just let the rope go and they can take a couple pieces and I pull the rope back up. It's going to be a weird one, but the thing that I've kind of taken comfort in is the fact that even though there's this crazy pandemic going on, and even though, maybe we're not going to Halloween parties like we used to last year, we still have the comfort of horror films. We still, if you're someone who's into Halloween, I mean, October 1st, I watched John Carpenter's Halloween at 2 p.m, because it's my favorite time of the year. When we were growing up, my family, we used to decorate the lawn. We'd have fog machines and strobe lights, and we cut out these people on plywood, and we would put outfits on them. So they were, life-size creatures or monsters or ghosts standing out in the front lawn, and we'd do plywood gravestones and paint them, and then we would have friends that would come over, and you would stand out in costume in the yard, and you would change it every year. So our house was kind of the house that you knew you were going to be scared at, because you'd be walking by and somebody would jump out at you and you didn't know which one it was going to be, or where it was going to come from. And some kids loved it. Some kids loved that they were so scared of it. One year I remember we took an old door, a bedroom door, and we cut a hole in it, and we stapled a glove to the top, and then we cut a hole in a candy bowl, and we glued the candy bowl over the hole in the glove. So then you pour in all the candy. So one person hides on the table with the tablecloth with their hand in the glove, and when somebody reaches in for candy, you grab their hand, and it scares the absolute bejesus out of them. So it's always been a big deal. I loved it. It's one of my favorite holidays. It's the weather's beautiful. You start getting into that fall, and so I, really looking forward to that kind of comfort, especially in a crazy year, to be okay, this is the one thing that I do every year that COVID isn't absolutely going to fuck up. You know what I mean? So really looking forward to that. And I say that to say, a little bit later in the month, one of my favorite guests that we've had on the show, she's returning. It's Jessica Gomez. She wrote a book called The Realist Bride. She's an author, writer. She wrote a book called The Realist Bride. She's working on a novel currently, but she also does horror film reviews. So she just put an article up on All Horror that it's 31 All Horror. You got to say that right, or it sounds like All Horror, and that's not the same website. Don't go to that site. It's allhorror.com. But she just did an article that was 31 movies to watch for during Halloween. Sorry, during October. So she's actually going to come on the show, and we're going to talk favorite horror films. We're going to talk all things Halloween. She's coming up towards the end of the month. And the reason that I am bringing that up is, again, if you are interested in sending us an email, if you have any questions for Jessica, if you want to, share what your favorite horror film is, send us an email. Again, that's contact@Johnversations Podcast. And we would absolutely love to answer your questions. Again, we really want to make it interactive. We want to have fun with it. We want to make the people listening to the show as much a part of the show as myself and the guests. So really excited for that. She's coming on. She'll be on before Halloween, so it'll kind of get the mood set. Halloween's on a Saturday this year too, so that's pretty dope. I can't having Halloween on a weekend. Not like it's anybody's going to be going out and doing anything crazy, but it's just, take the wins when you can get them. So again, that'll be Jessica Gomez. You can follow her on Instagram at writer Jessica Gomez. If you are following the show at Johnversations on Instagram, we're also on Facebook and on Twitter at a Johnversation. But excuse me. If you follow the show on Instagram, every time she has an article that comes out, I love her work. So we share it out in our stories and stuff like that. But if you're listening, you're a fan of horror films, you're a fan of good writing. She has a blog called Scare Fuck Kill that is so good, where she just does a different slasher film or teen horror film. And does a review and gets kind of I don't know, she gets deep with it and it's good. So I'm very, very excited. So please follow her on Instagram. That is, again, at writer Jessica Gomez. But guys, that's all I had for you for this week. Again, just a big thank you to everyone who's been listening, everyone who's been sharing. If you are one of the people who's bought a t-shirt, if you have if you've shared it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, if you follow us, just thank you guys for, I don't know, without you guys listening, I wouldn't be doing the show. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do something that I love, and thank you so much for supporting it and listening to it. And I promise, my plan is to keep it going for a real long time. We took a break after episode 8, came back for episode 9, and this is episode 34. We haven't missed a week. And we're going to keep on pushing. Hopefully the next mini episode or the next break, something like that, will be, episode 134. So, again, just thank you, all the love in the world. We look forward to seeing you next week. And just be safe out there. Be careful. Tell the people that you love them. Give them a hug if you can. Take care of each other. And we will see you next week. Bye.